this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the heart of storytelling. My name is Alyssa Curtain, and let's go on an adventure.
Welcome to this week's episode. This week I meet Donna Jacobs Sife, who is in Sydney in Australia. I haven't met Donna before, and this was our first meeting, and it was really quite exciting to meet someone new that I'd never met before and to see the work that she's doing in the world. I find that each time I interview someone in the storytelling world, I just keep getting blown away by the work people are doing, either in performance storytelling or in healing circles or with children or in, marginalised communities. And I find it a fascinating profession, and I was really excited to be able to talk to Donna. Unfortunately, the audio quality from her end wasn't great, so I apologise because I don't have the technical know-how to fix that, but I do think it's worth persisting listening to the interview because she's got some wonderful things to say and the work that she's doing. I hope you enjoy this interview with Donna. Welcome to this week's episode. This week we are lucky to have Donna Jacobs Sife, who is in Sydney. Welcome to the podcast, Donna.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear about your story of your storytelling, like the journey of your storytelling, how you started, where you've been and where you are now.
Okay. Well, it started a long time ago. I'm nearly 70 now, so it was a long time ago. It was probably when I was in my mid-30s, and I was teaching Jewish studies to my kids. They went to a little local school, and I thought that stories was the way to tell them, to teach them. And it was just a little school, and we were all quite good friends in Castle Crag, this sort of interesting little community that I live in. And in the end, everyone at the school wanted to come to the Jewish studies because she told stories. And I realized that, there's something in this. So I just told stories as often as I could to my community, my Jewish community. And then, and I was sort of doing it quite a lot. People were enjoying it. And then I saw a lyrebird where I was living. I was just thinking about, do I want to be a Jewish storyteller? Is that or do I want to be a storyteller and actually be a professional storyteller? And I was thinking that, and the lyrebird appeared in the bush down by my place, which I took as a sign that because the lyrebird is the storyteller of the bush, and that's my totem. And I took that to be just telling stories.
Oh, beautiful.
So I did for many years, but it became quite clear that I had a niche. I did school programs. I had an agent and went to schools, but the niche or the theme I always did was about peace and conflict and compassion and being a good human being, basically.
Mm. So where is your work taking you?
Oh, well, over the years, first of all, as a school performer, I would get in my little van, or I would, I'd go to all the states in Australia. I'd go to New Zealand about 2 or 3 times a year. My agent would provide a tour. I went for this, incredible one through the centre. I went to all the places in the Northern Territory and South Australia, and just in me and my little caravan or camper van, and I had a lot of adventures and staying in, youth hostels, stuff like that. But then I've also traveled all over the world as, that's my schoolwork and my agent, but just as me as a peace worker and the work that I did, I've been to New York and Singapore and South Africa. I did this big tour. I've been to Israel and Palestine. I've been to lots of places.
Oh, I'd love to know more about this peace worker work that you do, or you did. Tell me more about that.
So I've always been, I used to write a column in the Australian Jewish News, and um, and there was one particular column that sort of was quite interested, the community was interested in. I was talking about how I went to a protest and I couldn't stay. Anyway, look, it was just a number of people were interested, and I have a friend called Lyndall, and we said, should we start a group called Jewish Voices? And just so that we could all come together and say whatever we wanted to say in safety in a safe environment. So we did that in 2001, and we're still going strong today, unbelievably to me. So we just meet and we just talk, but the way we talk led me to we started off with a talking stick so that we could listen to each other and not feel as if we have to respond. It's a real gift to be able to do that. And I've just started to have a lot of relationships with Palestinians. This was just when Jewish Voices was beginning. And we did a lot of work together, Palestinian, this particular friend of mine, Abe, and we'd go to university and do conferences and things talking about our relationship and how we manage it. And my storytelling, became sort of anecdotal as well as ancient storytelling. And we were able to just tell our stories. That's what we based it on, everything we did. And I learned this particular thing about a listening circle. And so every week for years, we used to meet, and it was Palestinian and Jew and Christian, whoever wanted to come. And we would do this listening circle, which I've been doing a lot at the moment, because really it's the only, for me anyway, it's the only way to be able to make peace, basically, is to listen to people without feeling a need to respond, but deeply listen to each other. And in that listening to our hearts, we're not talking about what's happening on the ground. We're not talking about facts and material world. We're talking about how does it feel? I've been doing a lot of them lately. And that's the question I ask. How does it feel this time? And how does it feel? And we just go around with the stick. It's such a simple, ancient way to communicate with each other. But we need it so much because we're just in debate and in response and reaction, and it doesn't do much except rile you up. This is a way to open and really unite with each other. It's very special.
Yeah. So
And
have you
also
had some, yeah. So have you
sorry.
had some moments that you've just, memorable moments where that experience has created a bridge or has, I don't know, touched your heart as in a way?
The listening circle touches my heart every time I do it. It's so deep. And people are surprised and people are kind of reluctant. They think, what's the big deal? But actually, I've had some amazing transformations happen with the listening circle. When I was in South Africa, I was working with this women's refuge, Black women's refuge, and these white, well-heeled, wanting to do good women. And they asked me to do something with these two groups. And I told a story. I don't know if we have time to tell the story now, but
Yeah, we can tell a story.
it may even, I'll tell the story because it's, okay, so, it's because of COVID and not working as much, I'll have to bring it up because it's been a little while, you know what I mean? So you may know the story. It's about the hideous hag, the King Arthur story about, do you know that story?
I do know that story.
About women. I won't go through it because it's, but what I do with that story, and I don't know if it's fair to give the punchline of the story, but I will, which is that what is it that women truly want? They want sovereignty over their own lives. I tell that story because I tell it in a kind of funny, sexy way, and people can laugh. And then I will do a listening circle. And the question I will ask these Black women who've suffered so much and these white women is, what is it that takes away your sovereignty? And we'll pass the talking stick. And first of all, through the first round, no, none of the women from the refuge wanted to speak. They can pass. You can always pass.
Mm.
So none of them spoke. But they did hear the administrator of the centre, the women, the talking about what it is that takes away their sovereignty. And so the second time they began to look up. They hadn't even been able to look up, but they began to look up and smile a little bit. A couple of them shared, and the other women went even deeper, which often happens with the second round. And then by the third, everyone was sharing. They were laughing, they were crying, we were one. We were women who suffered, who
Mm.
struggled, who lost their sovereignty sometimes. And it was just a very, unforgettable time for me to see that kind of transformation.
Oh,
In the
wow.
end, there was hugging, there was equality because we could feel it in each other's heart.
Mm. So do you have any background in counselling or anything like that, or what's your, or,
Not,
I've talked to a lot of people about this line that stories are healing and they bring up these things, and
mm,
just wondered if you had some background in that area.
no,
No?
not just a rich life.
Yeah, great. So what
Nice
sort of
friends.
things, what do you do how do you create a safe space where people can do that, speak freely?
After what I do is after I tell that story of sovereignty and we do the listening circle, we can spiral down because what we've been speaking about is our lack of power. And
Mm.
so I will sing a song. We'll all have to start clapping our hands, and I'd sing, "Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking down to freedom land." And then we go round and everybody fills in the word, "Ain't gonna let," and then they can fill in that word and then we all sing together. And that brings us up.
Mm. Oh, that sounds wonderful. And so do you find that as a facilitator of these circles, do you find that it lights you up as well?
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. I
yeah.
try not to do anything that doesn't light me up, if possibly, if I can possibly avoid it.
Yeah.
No, I do love, and the other thing that I've been doing a lot is telling stories, of course, because I am a Jewish woman who's very involved in the community, and I am the storyteller of this particular synagogue in Sydney, which is such a great thing. I've been having to travel all over the world, but at last my community is asking me to tell stories regularly, so that's lovely. And I've been talking, of course, I haven't been talking about war. I've been talking about things that might inspire some open heart, but with storytelling, perhaps the story of Naked Truth. That
Oh,
Naked
yes.
Truth was walking down the road and saw everyone was turning away. No one wanted to talk to him, and he was feeling really dejected. And he saw Story coming down the other way, all dressed up in these beautiful clothes, and he went up to Story and said, "How come everyone wants to talk to you and no one wants to talk to me?" And Story said, "Well, look at you. I mean, you're naked. Put some clothes on, for heaven's sake. Put on my scarf, my hat." And once Naked Truth was dressed up in a bit of Story, people were much more willing to listen.
Mm.
So I'm not a great believer I don't commentate at all, really, with Story. I'll stand up, I'll tell my story, I'll sit down. And if they want to understand it more, I will tell it again. But I'm not likely to commentate because I think it takes more than it gives in many respects, that it stops my audience's process to be able to hear that story the way they're meant to. And maybe they won't know how they're meant to hear it until a year later. It's not for me to interrupt that, I don't think.
Mm.
I don't know how you feel about that.
I mean, you have no idea of someone's experience of life. I always say,
when people talk about Egypt, they have this romantic vision of what Egypt is. But for me, my ex-husband's Egyptian. I've been there twice. And my perspective of it, Egypt is very, very different to someone else's because of my life experiences. And you just don't know where the story is going to land in somebody because of what they've experienced in their life. So I think, yeah, that's a great way to do it, though, I think.
Look, I have another friend who's a storyteller who doesn't particularly agree with that. She thinks that sometimes an audience needs a little help to be able to get a
Mm.
handle on the story. So, I mean, and she's a wonderful storyteller. I take her very seriously. We've had this conversation over many years. So what I will do sometimes, if I want the audience to hear it in the way that I would like them to, is to tell a little story before I tell the story, so
Ah.
that it may, open it up a little before I can tell the story. But my own commentary, I've just lost interest in talking, actually, nowadays, other than stories, telling a story.
Yeah, so you obviously tell a lot of Jewish stories. And is there any other
No,
part of
not
the
at
world?
all. I tell
No?
stories from all over the world that might
Yeah.
say what it is that I want to say in the synagogue anywhere,
Oh,
Buddhist
okay.
stories. No, I'm not limited by that at all.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
I do love the Golem stories.
The
The
Gollum
Jewish,
stories.
yeah. They're one of my favorite characters or yeah,
Yeah.
archetypes in those stories.
Actually, it's the time for the Gollum, isn't it? You feel as
Mm.
if it is, maybe the
Mm.
Gollum is set loose.
Reshaping and reforming.
And of course, um, Emet is the word on the Gollum. And do you know that that's the
No.
word written on the column, emet, which means truth, which
Ah.
seems interesting to me. And when the rabbi removed the it left it with met, which is dead. And
Mm.
that's how the golem died.
Mm.
So, yeah, I do think truth is definitely in mortal danger at the moment.
Well, we are in interesting times, I guess. And I mean, there is that line between a storyteller and the how much of it is truth and how much of it is creation of the storyteller. How much of a liar can we be in a story, to not necessarily lying in a derogatory way, but lying as in creating an illusion of something. So that's quite interesting.
Well, I always think if it's serving a greater truth, that's all it needs to do. It has to
Mm,
serve a greater truth.
mm.
I mean, there are that whole thing about truth is interesting. Like, I tell a story about a bat. I don't know if you've seen
Yeah,
that
I watched the
anyway.
video. Yeah.
Yeah, so I often tell that story with a little beginning story, so that because I want the audience to hear it in somewhat the way I want them to. So I tell the story about going to detention centers, which I did very often, and that there was a kid, a little Sudanese boy, and he told me that story. And then I tell the story of the bat, and in the end, I say, and that little boy said to me, "Could you tell the world that we don't want to be bats?"
Mm,
And that's how I tell the story. Now, I did go to detention centers. I didn't meet a little Sudanese boy, but the person who gave me that story did. And
mm,
so I put it in myself. I don't have to. I've talked about this just recently with someone. I can say someone told me that they met in the detention. I don't have to take it as my own. And
mm,
certainly, if it states, it's highly criticized. It's a terrible, terrible thing to do. So, I mean, that was years ago. I haven't told it like that for a long time, but I question it now more. I
mm,
think it's fair enough to say about the Sudanese boy and to end it like that. But for me to say it was mine is wrong, is
mm.
not the thing.
Yeah.
Is it with you?
Yeah, yeah, I find I'm playing with this story at the moment with the same, there's a relative that I'm playing with the idea of telling his story and then merging it with a Scottish tale and, and making it his story. But, where's the line? And,
Mm,
it's about, I guess that's for me as a storyteller to find out where that line is and where
yeah.
I'm comfortable in pushing the boundaries of truth, um, for sure. Yeah.
I still think if it serves the greater truth, then it's
Yes.
got an excuse.
Yeah. Amazing. So this podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling. We've already touched on where I think we're going to go with this. But what do you think is at the heart of storytelling, the oral tradition?
In my own tradition,
In the oral tradition.
in the oral tradition. All right. Um, the thing about storytelling, because of, the work that I do with Palestinians and with Jews and blacks and whites and, disparate groups very often. The thing about storytelling is that I don't have to ever touch that and yet speak to it.
Mm.
So it's like I like if I'm going to be talking to Israelis and Palestinians, let's say, I might begin by saying, there was a little boy was walking with his grandfather, and the little boy said to his grandfather, is it true that the lion is the king of the jungle? And his grandfather said, yeah, it's true. And the little boy said, well, if it's true, why is it that every time I hear about man and lion, it's always man that wins? And the grandfather said, it'll always be like that until the lion tells the story.
Mm.
And I don't have to say anything. I leave the story to speak for itself. And everyone can feel it in their heart rather than in their head. And that's the beauty of story.
Mm. Well, it tells the truth then, doesn't it? Tells a truth, yeah.
But in a way that they don't have to defend themselves.
Mm. Can you talk more about that, the defending self? The
Talk more
defending of
about,
self.
well,
Yeah.
if I said, I'd like everybody to listen today to the other, I want you to know that they have a story that's just as important as yours. I could say that, but that's too close for
Mm.
people to be able to say, I don't really want to do that.
Mm.
But if I tell that story about the little boy and the grandfather, there's nothing much to defend against. It's a story and it goes to the heart, and they can see the wisdom in that or
Mm.
not. But it wouldn't be the kind of defense that's personal. That's what naked truth does. It makes
Mm.
you hunker down. I've lost all desire to talk about anything that happens on the ground anymore. After this year, I don't feel inclined to engage with anything that's real. I just do a lot of listening circles, and we do circles with Palestinians and Jews, and we listen to each other. I can't do anything else.
Mm. I mean, that's great service though. What you're doing there is,
I think it is.
yeah, you're creating bridges and building peace, and that's
I've got many
priceless.
friends who are much more active, and I used to be so, but I just don't. I don't know.
Mm. So why do you think, I mean, we've talked about it a bit, but why do you think we still need the oral tradition stories that are spoken, not written?
It's so different, isn't it, reading a story to having it told to you? First of all, we've got such genetic memory of hearing stories. It's, I mean, ever since we were human beings, we were telling each other stories. There's this little saying or image that the angels were asking God, why did you create human beings? They're so troublesome. And God said, because I like a good story. So I just think it's sort of like music in a way, but not quite like music, because music's got, other properties that are extraordinary, bring people to life. My mother was profoundly demented, profoundly so, and she couldn't speak, but we could sing. She remembered the words and we could sing. It just brought her back.
Mm.
And so music can do that, but a story, it's like a dream. We know that dreams are important to us, and stories are like that. They live here and they'll come up when you need them, perhaps.
Mm. Oh, they definitely do. I've just been doing a storytelling workshop with some children, and
they move into the dream space very quickly and then they stay in it. It's just beautiful to watch. And,
Yeah.
I think if we can get more adults in that space, it might make some big changes that we really need in the world. Should be wonderful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think the imagination and sort of that sense of wonder is, the saving of the world in some respects. But I also think that, there's a ratio of people, that you'll never get, people who are born a bit like that, they'll be like that. And people who are born and they have to contribute as well,
Mm,
So I know I was born like that, you were born like that, but I don't know how much, some people who can't manage metaphor or,
mm.
can't, aren't imaginative in that way. I think that they kind of stay that way a lot of the time. It's because it's their type, their soul,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. You sound like a very spiritual sort of person. I heard and you've got a lovely, gentle energy. And I just wonder, were you always like this, or did you have to foster that over time, or have you just become that?
It's funny. I think that now that I'm old, the things that I knew that I sort of contemplated and felt were true and that in my life, they just sort of manifest now. I don't have to think about them so much anymore. They just are. So it's interesting. Getting old is a fascinating thing. I love it actually. Because I just sort of see that I don't have to struggle to think like that or I am it. It's sort of, I'm old enough to be it.
Mm.
Even it's sort of like manifest in my ankle. I had a really serious car accident when I was 17, broke many bones on the right side of my body. I was in hospital 4 months and had a collar for 2 years. And I broke my ankle in about 3 or 4 places. I don't even know. I was too sick to ask. And I've been in pain, terrible pain with my ankle all my life. But it's been 50 years since my car accident, and my ankle has fused itself so that it doesn't move anymore. And the pain is much less than it's been all my life. And that's kind of like getting old. It's kind of a manifestation of that the worries and the angst and the thing, it's okay. It's sort of all blurs into, you know, something good for me. Like, everything is alive now because I thought it might be when I was young.
Mm. Well, it sounds like a wonderful way to be, to quieten the mind and not be full of worry and angst and things
Well,
like
no,
that.
I still have angst. I know it still comes every now and again, but not as much, not as strong, not as much.
Mhm.
I can
Easy
still
to,
put my arms around each other and say, "Don't worry about it, Donna, it'll be fine." And I tell this story, "Gamze avor," which means "this too shall pass," and
yeah,
really does, so you just don't have to get attached, really.
yeah. Do you have an idea of what you'd like your legacy to be, since we're talking about aging and things, in the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, it reminds me of this little story about, they asked this man at a funeral, said, what would you like to hear? The first words said about you when you die. And he thought about it and he said, you know what I'd like to hear? I'd like to hear, look, he's moving. Um, but legacy, I'll leave that for everybody else, I guess. But I've got 9 grandchildren, and I'm a storyteller. I've been a teacher all my life. I believe in interfaith. Let's see what happens when I go.
Yeah. Oh, I think, yeah. It sounds like story has influenced your life in many, many wonderful ways.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Doesn't it though? I mean, for us all, story, it sort of does everything. Some stories you live, I've got some stories that I just live by. I feel so enriched by the wisdom of the stories that I've told. Um, yeah, I'm a
Mm,
lucky.
incredible. So you've been storytelling for a long time. Do you have some advice for emerging and beginner storytellers?
Well, the first thing I would say is you have to tell a story that you love. Don't ever
Mm,
sort of tell a story unless you really love it and you know why you want to tell it.
mm,
Because in my experience, if you tell a story and you don't really know why you're telling it, the audience don't really know why they heard it.
mm,
It's kind of a magic exchange. You really, and you need to know why you're telling it. They may hear it in a completely different way. It's got nothing to do with you, how they hear it, but you have to tell it with a, knowing why you're telling that story.
mm,
That's very important, I think. And tell the story always tell the story that you love, that you believe in. And, like everyone tells a story a different way. I remember there was this wonderful woman, Pauline McLeod, Auntie Pauline McLeod. She's gone now, but she was an Indigenous woman. She was on play school and, she was wonderful. And she told a story, whispering. She whispered the whole story.
mm.
And I was entranced. Now, you wouldn't go and tell someone, go and whisper a story. You just have to do what the story moves you to do, I think.
Mm. Wow, that's really great advice. I really like that.
Tell it to yourself a lot in the forest or something and see what comes out. And then, oh, yeah, that's good. That'll stay. That's what I would do.
Mm. And in terms of facilitating groups like you do, what would be some things you could offer as advice for hosting those?
It's really just the listening circles that I do at the moment, although I'm doing that workshop with settle stories. I didn't recognize what it was. Um, uh, the way I set up a listening circle, and I guess this is how we would set up anything, is that I make the space a reverent space, a sacred space. Nothing will leave this room.
Mm,
Everyone is safe to say whatever without fear of judgment. And I light a candle. And so I elevate the space a little. I think that keeps people feeling safe. And then when I finish the listening circle or something, I'll always blow out the candle. We'll hold hands and we'll say something. If it's a Jewish group, we say "Hi," which is life. And if it's not, we often go "Ho," just to sort of bring it to a sort of a dignified end. I can't think of another word for it, but a good end. And then they go out, and that's not this space anymore. That was once upon a time.
mm,
That important, that incredibly important thing that removes us from this time and this place, so that children are protected when we say once upon a time, not this time, not
mm,
here and now. Switches don't exist here. It's once upon a time. And I think Roald Dahl, my niece read The Witches. She was very, what's the word when you're very, very quick at reading. And she read it when she was about 5, I think. And Roald Dahl goes into real lengths to sort of say, this is not a fairy tale. This is real.
mm,
And she was completely freaked out. And I thought he did the wrong thing.
mm,
That children need the space between here and now and the story. We all do, I think. We all do.
mm,
Otherwise, it's not good. You made that
mm.
mistake. I like him, but you made a mistake. She freaked out. I mean, poor girl.
You said you did a lot of work with children. Did you modify things when you did with, like, change the stories a bit when you worked with children?
I like to frighten children. I think that, did you ever read, what was it, The Uses of Enchantment, Bruno Bettelheim?
Oh,
He
I've got
was
it
a,
here. I just got it
okay,
this
the
week.
terms of endearment, not terms of endearment, but enlightenment or something. He's big on letting children get fearful in the story and then to take them to a place of satisfaction and contentment. And I'm a believer in that. I don't hold back. I mean,
Mm.
occasionally I have gone too far. I remember I was telling a story just to one little girl, a daughter of a friend of mine, and I was telling her a Little Red Riding Hood, and I said, "Oh, the better to eat you up," like that. And she just burst into tears. And I'm
Oh,
looking at her thinking, oh, I went too far. And she's just trying to control herself. And then she says, again. She wanted it again and again and again and again. She really wanted me to frighten her like that. So that was, that was kind of confirming to me. That's right. They want to be able to deal with those things in a safe environment. So I'm not, I don't mind frightening them, but I always want to bring them back to a place that's, happy ever after.
Well, that's really good advice, I think. And I really like your suggestions for holding the space in a story circle, because a lot of my friends do that. So that would be really great. Well, it's been a great pleasure to have a chat with you today, Donna. Are you telling stories still, or just in your synagogue?
I've got a whole program that I'm doing, a whole hour performance with Settle Story, as well
Yeah.
as the workshop. And I'm telling stories all the time, but I'm not doing a show as such. I haven't done a show for a while, so I'm going to have to really brush up because, I may have been doing it for 35 years, but, if you stop doing it, you lose it. You have to keep muscle going. That's why I'm so grateful that I've got at least a weekly story in me.
That's a really great thing to have a weekly story. I quite like having the children's group just to keep the fairy tales really
Keep the
fresh. And
muscle. You
yeah,
really need to keep going. Yeah.
yeah. And storytellers need an audience. So it's always good to have an audience to tell a story to.
When I do the Settle Stories, it's going to be just me on a screen for the whole hour telling myself stories. I'm not going to see any of the audience at all. So I think that's going to be weird, but we'll give it a go. I'll just tell myself stories.
So have you done any online stuff before?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, a little bit.
Do you find it much different?
I did find I did this whole workshop online in New York. I don't know if you know Healing Story Alliance. I don't know if you know that. But yeah. So I did a big workshop and it was on Zoom. And people hadn't turned off their mute and they didn't really know how to do it, and it was so loud. And then I'm sort of talking to myself and asking questions and no one's answering, and I felt really kind of, hello, is anybody there? I found it quite disconcerting a little bit. Yeah, I did. But we'll see how we go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a live performance or a story, you can gauge the responses straight away, whereas on camera it's a bit harder to do that, isn't it?
No, there's no one there. There's not going to be anyone there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm challenged by that idea. I mean, I'll just be telling it to myself. I'll just try and enjoy myself.
Entertain yourself.
Well, I always think that that's when, you've told a good story, is when you're just become the listener as well and you forget you're
Yeah.
even telling.
Yeah. Amazing. So where can people find you if they want to find out about you and your work?
Well, you can just Google me. There's quite a lot online, but also I've got a website that's got lots of interviews and stories and things.
Okay. All right. Well, we can put the links and everything in the show notes. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
I think you've got my website, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I have. I'll put it all in the notes so everyone can find out a bit more about you, because it sounds like you are doing wonderful work in the peace space, and that's priceless. So thank you for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling, and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.